What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Mamaverse Podcast, where we bring experts in physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness to talk about how moms can improve their overall health in their daily life. I'm your host, Tu-Hien Lee, and our guest today is Bethany Gettis. Bethany is a highly dynamic, internationally known, certified holistic nutritional consultant and real food advocate. Bethany is focused on guiding busy, health-conscious mothers to their own optimum healthy lifestyle through nutrition while creating constant holistic balance and harmony. Welcome, Bethany.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, we are so happy for you to be on the Mamaverse podcast. So, would you like to do a quick introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, exactly. Yeah. So I kind of started my journey actually as a nurse, and I worked in the diet and health industry for about 5 years before I had my two boys. And yeah, it was interesting. It basically showed me that diets were revolving doors and that a lot of the people that I was dealing with weren't actually getting the mindset piece involved, right? So a lot of people came back in heavier every year, and it was really disappointing and it was quite sad to see. So I decided to go back to school and do my nutrition diploma while I was still working there. And I eventually decided, once I had my first son, that I wanted to do my own business and help people. So that's where Nutritious and Delicious came from. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since. So I've had my boys, they're 7 and 8 years old now, and working from home. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned that were you working in a hospital? Is that
no, I was working in a diet clinic at the time. So
I see. What does a diet clinic entail?
It's like medically supervised, basically. So obviously, if you're on a diet, your calories are restricted, the type of food you're eating are restricted. So again, there's a lot of notion around restrictions. And I just found that whenever I was actually in that environment, people actually backfired and ended up binge eating instead. So people would lose the weight and either regain the weight back, or they would be on the program and then they would be binge eating throughout and not understanding why, because it's a psychology thing at the end of the day. A lot of people, there's a lot of different aspects with food where there's pain and pleasure with food. People can either, help themselves by, giving themselves food for love and things like that, right? So I think holistic nutrition really looks at the aspect of the person and not having them fit a certain mold versus a diet makes you fit that mold, right?
Right. And I've heard of so many diets and probably have tried so many of them. And it always once you're off of it, you just kind of go back to your old habits. So it's hard to, I guess, maintain that loss. So you kind of touched upon it a little bit just now, is talking about holistic nutrition. Mm-hmm. Can you give us more detail on what that is and how that's different from how normal, I guess, nutrition is looked at?
Definitely. So holistic nutrition basically is looking at the person, like mind, body, spirit, soul, everything, right? Because, you're not just a physical being and you can't just be given a meal plan and say, okay, off you go. Most people, if they're just kind of given a meal plan and they're kind of living with their own devices, they're still going to go back to bad habits, right? Holistic nutrition is helping them eating more intuitively, and is helping actually give the right foods and the right supplements to the right person, versus, like I said, sort of having this mold where you're fitting into, whether it's the, food pyramid or the a certain diet or anything like that, right? So you're actually fitting something to a person and you're making it more individualized. Or a family, even if you're doing a meal plan for a family, like some families don't eat dairy or, don't eat meat and things like that. But if you're a typical diet or something like that, you're actually going to try and get them to eat what you've got, and then they feel really restricted, right? So holistic nutrition is just kind of like a whole mind, body, spirit aspect.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned eating, what was it?
Intuitively.
Intuitively.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I think a lot of us we underestimate to me, I think what we need, like if you watch children, children usually will know what they want for food. And a lot of people think, oh, if you left children to their own device, they'll only eat candy and sweets and things like that. They actually don't. Children, they've done studies that if they leave out really healthy food and junk food at the same time, they actually overall eat a very balanced diet, because they don't have that connotation, that emotion around food yet, right? And it's not been trained into them. Versus adults, we've gone through years and years of things like the Clean Dinner Plate Club, where basically we're guilted as a family to eat our food. And it's, if you don't eat it, we feel bad because that person's put their love and their energy and their effort into it. So it's, these emotions are attached to us as we grow up, and it's adults that are the ones that we're reteaching this to the next generation. And if we actually look at it more like an intuitive eating pattern, like a child would, we wouldn't have as many problems as we do today with obesity and eating disorders and things like that, because children know what they like and they know when they're full as well. That's the other aspect, is adults overeat because, it's usually tied around emotion somewhere.
Interesting. I've always told my daughter, she's 7, like, if you're full, that's fine. You don't have to finish it all. But I do obviously try to like recommend and have her eat more of the healthy things than the non-healthy things. But it is like a tricky balance to get your kids to eat, healthy. So, in the Mamaverse, most of our audience are moms and parents. So, and working with your clients, like what have you experienced as be like the biggest challenge for moms when they're learning how to do holistic nutrition, especially when I'm assuming they have to do it for their family, right?
Yeah, a lot of the times I usually get moms coming to me first trying to lose weight for themselves. So it's typically like, I've gained a lot of weight from my children and my pregnancies, and I've just never lost the weight. So they usually come to me first based on that. And then as we kind of get into it and we kind of go through more of the coaching aspect, that's where we start to find like, okay, well, now my kids are picky eaters and they're not, kind of eating the fruits and the vegetables and the things that I want them to eat. But then I start asking them, well, how do you feel about that kind of food? Are like, the thing is to food as much as, in society, we say it's junk food and it's not good for you and all that stuff. You want to kind of make food neutral, because if we start putting charge to it, like, oh, that food's bad, like, don't eat that, like, that's not good for you. What do you want? You usually want the things that you can't have, right? So that's usually where a lot more people are geared to like, well, mom says I can't have those chips, so now I want them, or that cookie, now I want it, right? And that's human nature, unfortunately. And, that's why I think having it just around and in a general way, like, okay, well, let's just eat the healthy food first. And that's what I always say to my boys. Like, I give them little bits of things here and there, cookies, cupcakes, chips, and things like that, because that's part of being a kid and growing up. If I was restrictive with them and said, you can't have, this sugar or these cookies or this cupcake, guess what? They're going to start sneaking it. And I've seen that with many parents where the kids are starting to build a stash or their partner is, because they're on their partner about controlling what they eat or what they don't eat, or like the shaming and things like that goes on. So, if we make food neutral and just have it around and it's abundant, most people will realize like, I don't feel good having that. Like even my boys like understand that too. And even just when you're cooking like new vegetables or cutting up new fruit, just offer it to the kids or offer it to your partner. They're still going to have the ability to say yes or no. But, if you're kind of being that example for them and you're having a spread of food out, they'll start to realize like, okay, well, this is what's out for dinner. Like there's nothing else. Like she's not going to make another meal for me. Like that's what it is. They'll eventually start to pick it up and say like, I actually like this, or getting them to participate in making food. Like it took my youngest son, he was 3 at the time, to make a salad for him to actually eat it, because whatever salad I put out, he didn't like it and he didn't want to eat it. And then as soon as I got him to pick the vegetables, gave him a blunt knife to cut up a couple of little veggies, put them in, choose what he wanted, and then choose which dressing, he wanted as well. He actually turned around and said, I like salad now, because he got to make it. So just things like that, right? Like just little tips and stuff.
Yeah, I would say that's a huge parent win right there, to get your kids to eat salad.
Yeah.
I like that approach to not making food charged and making it more
Yeah.
neutral. I would assume as like a parent, a mom trying to meal plan and try to offer more nutritious foods than non-nutritious foods,
Mm-hmm.
but not completely restricting. Cause I feel like I don't want to accidentally teach my daughter like about giving her, like making her feel bad for eating certain things or like,
Right.
feel like she has like a body image complex accidentally, and
Right.
kids are so susceptible to that.
They pick up on like even your language, even if you're not talking to them about it and you're talking to somebody else and they're overhearing it, like
mm,
that's where I think definitely, like, I'm raising boys, but definitely raising girls with body image and stuff like that. Boys can have it too. Like, it's not, boys aren't immune to having body image issues like at all. It's just not talked about as much. But definitely when you're kind of looking at your body or talking about like, oh, mommy's not going to eat that today because that's too high in fat or something like that, that's when they clue in, oh, like, well, I don't want to eat that either, right? Like it's not healthy for me. And like I explained to my boys, like, for example, things like McDonald's and stuff like that. Like I know they get it with grandparents and like that's a treat. And they say to me, like, oh, like, is that healthy? And I'll be like, well, no, it's not, but it's a treat. And it's okay to have a treat every once in a while, but we like to eat healthy as much as we can. So like I said, when we pack lunches and things like that, I always get them to pick out a fruit or a vegetable first. And they take it in turns to add what they want in. And they both know what each other don't like. So, for example, one of them doesn't like tomatoes, but the other one likes broccoli. So they'll always cater to their, other brother and say, okay, well, he doesn't want tomatoes, so I'm going to give him his broccoli instead. And he likes this dip. So they kind of understand, like they have like obviously little things that they don't want to eat, but that's okay. They don't have to be forced to eat that tomato or that broccoli. They can eat a different one. And again, that's not charging it, right? Because if you're forcing them and saying like, you have to eat your broccoli on your plate or whatever it is, and they really don't like it, they're going to start having issues with like never eating it again because it's too charged, right?
mm,
Sometimes it just means pulling that vegetable out for a while and like in 6 months trying it again and maybe doing it in a different way, like maybe having it raw with a dip instead of like cooking it. Like it's just sometimes a texture thing for children as well.
yeah, I love that suggestion. I'm going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're speaking about foods, I'm realizing it's a very emotional topic.
It is
And
a
then
lot.
yeah, and that you do in your working with your clients, you're talking about the mindset. That's what you were mentioning before at your
Mm-hmm.
previous job, that they were missing the mindset piece. Can you like touch upon that a little bit more and how you work with clients regarding this?
Definitely. Yeah. So basically it's like the whole gym notion when you say like, oh, you go to the gym and it's 20% and then 80% is food. Okay. Well, when you get to the food aspect, it's 80% mindset and 20% food. So it's like breaking down kind of that physical component. Like we all know we have to eat to survive. Like we know a lot of people say to me like, oh, I'm addicted to food. I wish I could just like stop eating altogether so I'd never have to worry about it again. But the problem is it's the emotions that are charged around the foods. And it typically, if you go backwards, it goes back to childhood. So it's kind of what we're teaching right now. And that's why I like dealing with moms, because think about it. Who's mom teaching right now? We're teaching like the next generations, and those children will teach the next generations, and it continues on and on and on, right? So it's usually if I can kind of get to mom first and find out her tapes around food. Usually it's not always your tapes. It's something you've taken along with you that's been like a family thing, or it could be from just hearing like friends being teenagers. I know a lot of girls around like junior high, high school suffer with body image issues, and that's typically normal. But if you continue that into your adulthood and you bring that in with children and stuff like that, your mindset's still there, right? And you haven't kind of done anything to sort of unpack that. And the first point of it is realization. So when you start hearing the wording coming out, like this is why coaching is really good, because as I get to listen to my clients, I get to listen to sort of their language and what they're saying. And I start reiterating it back to them. Like, do you hear that you're saying this or doing that? And they're like, no, like I have no idea. So as soon as I kind of hear that in them, it's being a reflection back to them and showing them do you see a problem with this? And sometimes they're like, no, but sometimes they see it and they're like, wow, like I didn't realize I still had that going on, that tape, or I'm passing it along to other people in my life, you know. And as soon as you kind of start to realize something, that's when you actually do something about it. It's not easy. It's not like right overnight it's going to happen and your kids are going to magically eat vegetables and you're going to enjoy this type of food again, or not feel like you need to go on a diet or things like that. It takes months to get to that point. But as soon as you start to understand it, that's when we start unpacking the mindset and you're like, oh, okay. So instead of doing that, we kind of replace it with something else that's like a healthier habit, because a lot of people have gotten into kind of like this robot mode of habitual occurrences, and we're repeating them without even knowing it. So this is why, like, kind of like I said, like it's good to kind of have that reflection back from somebody. And that's what the diet industry is missing, because they want you in and out, right? It's a quick, easy flip for them to get you on something, lose the weight. But the problem is it's the education that's missing, right? So that's kind of where the difference lays.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the tape, you mean like chat, like stories that they're telling themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It goes around everything. It goes around money, it goes around food, it goes around security. And like all those things can be wrapped into food as well. Like, we don't have enough money, so you have to eat everything on your plate. You know, your mom made that dinner for you. Like, don't you dare leave it. You know, like it's these tapes that keep going on. And we're wondering why we're stuffing ourselves or eating or restricting certain foods from ourselves, because it's tied somewhere to sometimes money, sometimes love and security, sometimes self-worth. There's a whole, like, it depends on the person. It's a whole thing that you can unpack.
Wow. So now that you're mentioning it, like this is some deep stuff. Like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work to work through those stories and limiting beliefs. Like you said, a couple months, it could be a lifetime of working through this stuff, right?
It depends. It depends on the person. But typically, if if it's somebody that's got a lot of weight to lose, and I'm talking about like over 100 pounds to lose, that's probably more, I'd say, a lifetime, because you've done things to the extreme to get to that point, and that those beliefs are very much real to you. So yes, that would be something where you'd be doing a long-term probably program or coaching or therapy or something with somebody around that to get yourself to a place. Like, you got to remember how many years you've done this for, right? Like, you can't say like overnight, like all of a sudden you're going to be amazing. It's like anything. It's like, you know, relationship building skills or money, financial skills, all that kind of stuff. Like, you're not going to just be like, oh, I know what I'm doing now, like within a month, and you're good to go. Like, you're going to have downfalls, and you're going to have those areas where you go back to habits. And that's why you need someone there to kind of be like, okay, like, I get you're doing this again. Like, let's try and pivot this way instead. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it catches you before you kind of go back full force to those habits again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you're working with your clients, especially the moms who are busy and probably the ones that are doing a lot of like the nutritional meal planning, what have you found has been the most successful for them to adopt a new lifestyle that has been like sustainable?
I think a lot of it is that moms come to me based off, they want their family to be healthier. And usually mom is always putting herself on the bottom of the list, priority list. But I don't think a lot of moms realize that it starts with them. And that's where basically our mission is: a healthy family starts with a healthy parent. Because if you're wanting a healthy family, you need some leaders in the home first to kind of be showing that. It doesn't always have to be both partners. And I think that's where there's a lot of fighting that goes on, I guess, with different partners and things like that, because you're not doing this and I'm doing that, and there's a lot of that going on. But the problem is you got to concentrate on you, because honestly, like, I've lived it myself. If you can be a good example, kids will gravitate towards that, definitely, and they'll listen. And yes, I know sometimes like other partners and stuff can sabotage those efforts and stuff, you know, but you know, you're trying to do the best for yourself and your children. And I find a lot of women will, like I said, do this because they want to do it for their children mainly. So they're not kind of looking for themselves. Like a lot of women are like, oh, I'll be fine. And the problem is when mom doesn't look after herself as well, she's going to get resentful and burnt out. And it's not about adding more on your to-do list or more things like, oh, meal planning or meal prepping. Now I have to do all this. It's just shifting the perspective and changing some of your own habits around, because eventually your habits are going to go actually into the children's habits as well. You can't expect other people to change. You basically, all you can do is inspire them with what you're doing.
I agree with that so much. It's basically what we believe in the Mamaverse too. We want to give moms permission to take care of themselves, because it does start with them. It's part of self-care for the family. You got to take care of yourself so that you can show up in abundance of love and overflow for your family. Mm-hmm. So I definitely agree with that. So for a busy mom who, is raising a family and trying to do better and just like doesn't know where to start and, in a holistic nutrition, where would you suggest is like the first step that they can take?
I would usually say to moms, like, don't wait, because the problem is the more you wait and you're sitting around, the problems get worse and you're not doing anything about it. And I think a lot of people do that. They kind of wait until they have like a breaking point to do anything in their life, whether it's, relationship or money or anything or food. Like they've gotten to the point where they're like, I can't fit on my clothes. I don't feel good about myself. Like my confidence is low, or I feel burnt out as a mom. And if anything, it's start now, start somewhere. Like, even if it's something really small, you just have to start. So that's reaching out to somebody and saying, I don't know what I'm doing and I need help, and I think a lot of the times as women, we have a hard time asking for help, and it kind of just sits by the wayside for years and years. And we wonder why we feel resentful, why we still have these same tapes going on. We're still not learning anything different. Our kids are still battling with us at the dinner table, all those things. Start now, get some help, and just say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need your guidance.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of women, a lot of people like probably don't even realize how emotional food and eating is, or maybe they do. And it's not something that's easy to overcome. Just, all right, get over it and just start changing habits. Like it is very like ingrained into how we were raised and the habits that we picked up. So yeah, baby steps, maybe something simple with just like trying to drink more water or something like that, and substituting out sodas for water.
Yeah,
I would say.
I find throughout like our memberships and stuff, humor has helped because it's a hard subject. It's when you go back and you think, dang, like I've grown up like this, like how did I not see these like things going on, and I'm repeating it, and now I feel guilty. Like you can get into a trap of like feeling really bad about yourself. But if you kind of look at it lightheartedly and think, my parents did the best they could and I was doing the best I could, and put a little humor in there, it kind of just like, it lightens it up, and you start to think, okay, like I can't be that hard on myself. Like, I got to start somewhere. Right. So that's kind of what we do as well.
I like that. I really like that. Mm-hmm. So Bethany, I really enjoyed chatting with you. And I felt like this conversation was so educational for not only me, but the listeners as well, the other parents who are listening. So where can our listeners connect with you and find you?
Yeah, sure. So my website is www.ndelish.com, and all my social handles are on there. You can check out what I do, and you can contact me on there as well. So to get started.
Awesome. So I will link all of that in the show notes for everybody to go check out Bethany and her website and see what she's offering on the nutrition side. Definitely go give her a follow on Instagram. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Mamaverse podcast, and we can't wait to have and collab with you again in the future. And for all those who are listening, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode.